Hi, this is Backstage Pass with Mike Ross. Today I'm with my good friend Mack Mullins, who is actually the lead singer in an Ozzy Tribute Band called Blizzard of Ozzy for 15 years. First time I saw you, Mack, was probably about 2015, and I was blown away. You guys were so good. And I've even had the opportunity to play some of the same festivals as you all. In fact, we played back at Coming Music Festival, and I've got some pictures that I recently located of us backstage there. That was a lot of fun. As you know, I'm doing this documentary really to educate people on all the work and effort involved before and after a show. A lot of people probably think, oh, these guys just get together a few times, they get up on stage, they have a good time, and then they go home and it's that easy, right? So that's the purpose of this documentary. And before we get into all of that, what I'd like to ask you first is, tell us about your background. How did you get involved in music, your singing? What ultimately led you to creating the Blizzard of Ozzy?
Well, it all started with Kiss, 1977, Kiss Alive 2, gatefold, open it up, you see that stage, you see the band, you drop the needle on the record, you hear the crowd. I'm like, whatever this is, I want to do that. But, initially I wanted to be a drummer like yourself. But that didn't work out, house too small, drums too loud. So eventually it led to me being a singer. But what was important, what I learned early on, is if you're going to be the singer, you want to be that guy on that stage, you got to learn how to write songs. So immediately, I started writing songs, trying to be a singer, kind of grow through that. So you go through the progression of, you've got your middle school buddies and you start ticky-tacking around, and that graduate to your high school buddies and get a little bit better. You're doing talent shows, local BFWs, which eventually led to college and, doing the club bands and doing that type of things and writing songs, doing covers, whatever it took to get in the club back in the 80s. We were doing that. And one of the rubs and one of the knocks against me was that, hey, he was like, this is cool and your band is cool, but you sound a lot like Ozzy. So it wasn't an intentional thing. It wasn't like Ozzy's my guy and I want to, I was a fan, but it was just a tonal type thing that just came out, and I rejected it for years. I was like, I'm trying to do my own thing. Yeah, right. It's cool, but whatever. But it eventually led to, okay, maybe you should embrace it a little bit. Somebody talked me into cutting a song. It was Bark of the Moon, and immediately I got a lot of attention.
How old were you at that time?
At that point, I was probably about 35, 36 or whatever. Okay. And I'm like, I'm just everyday normal business guy. I don't look like Ozzy at that point. I'm not doing, I just happened to sound like him. And especially when I tried, some of the tonal things and the inflections or whatever, it really came out at that point. So it was from there, it just kind of, honestly, just blew up.
It's interesting. You mentioned Kiss Alive too. I didn't know that was your inspiration. I think it was 7th grade. I went to summer camp, and 6th or 7th grade, and it was a week or two, and someone kept playing this live album over and over and over, and I was like, man, this is so good. What is this? This is Kiss Alive 2. And it inspired me as well to some degree. That's
maybe we went to the same camp.
Yeah. As you know, picking the right guys for a band or girls is a challenge. And it's not just about finding the most talented musicians you can find, but it's the personalities, it's the chemistry. Do you all get along? Mm-hmm. Did you find it hard to find the right mix of guys or gals? Tell us about that.
Yeah, eventually, when you first start off, you pretty much as take you can get. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously, it's got a certain amount of talent, but no one really sees the vision necessarily. You're not playing arenas or big theaters or festivals, that kind of thing. You're playing, the Wild Wing, or you're playing whatever rinky-dink club. So you get musicians that are, you just kind of who you can get, and then you start to fish through personalities and talent levels, and then you start to see dedication. And that's where it really, for us, or for me necessarily, it was like, okay, I need, in order to put together the show and the type of show that we think that is, a proper tribute, it's got to be the full meal deal. It can't just be me up there stumbling around acting like Ozzy. It's got to be the full production.
Right.
And not everybody's on board with that kind of stuff. So, we had some alumni. You go out there and people that don't want to do that kind of stuff. So you eventually, as you grow, you move up in caliber and musician, and it's not just musicians, it's dedication and what they're willing to do to make the show bigger. So yeah, it was tough. And eventually we got to the point where we're like, okay, this is the lineup. These guys are dedicated. They're amazing musicians. They're willing to do whatever it takes to put on, a proper tribute show.
How did you find them?
In the beginning, it's much like anything else. You put it out like a Village Voice or whatever. I think at the time it was Creative Loafing around.
Yeah,
there,
Creative Loafing,
something along those lines. But once your reputation starts to grow and people start to know you, they start approaching you. So as slots open up or whatever, then you can, at that point you got your, hey, Mike's a hell of a drummer. I really like him. I think he can. I say, hey, I'll pick up the phone and call you and go, hey.
But I never got the call though.
Are you interested? Yeah, it's funny. Yeah,
that's great. No, it's a challenge getting the right guys, and there's always a lot of musical chairs being played, right? Somebody has to leave for some reason, and then you have to find that slot. You have to go through all the songs again and get tight. Yeah, it's quite.
We lost a drummer to Zoso, and I don't blame him. I mean, Zoso. They're a national touring band that was, so I get it. I understood. But the next guy up, and we actually robbed the Pantera band's drummer.
Wow.
So they got him. So that's kind of how that stuff kind of moves around, and they work their way up, and you work your way up, and it works out.
How much time did you spend studying Ozzy's stage presence and his movements and that kind of thing?
Hours. I mean, obviously, if you're going to do this right and you want to do a proper tribute, yes, you've got to have the music down. Yes, you've got to have the lyrics and the vocal, but it's a full. I mean, you want to be the people to be immersed in it. So, I mean, all the way to how he holds his hands, the way he moves across the stage, the way he jumps when he jumps. There's a cadence, there's a pace to it. What the set list looks like, what that pace looks like. The things he says to the crowd. And people that are big fans, they are expecting these things as as the show progresses. You just can't go up there willy nilly. You've got to know what you're doing from the minute the lights go out to the minute they go out and they're done. So everything was scripted for the most part from the beginning of the show to the very end.
Wow.
So hours and hours.
What did it feel like the first time you stepped out as Ozzy, that very first time? Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, I sure do. It was just like a local Wild Wings. It was awful. I mean, we brought so much gear. We blew the lights into place, set off smoke alarms. There was probably 30 people. It was absolutely awful. I was nervous but you got to start somewhere. So so that's where we started, and thank God we ended up much higher than that. People, and this is the God's honest truth, don't know you're not him. You play some of these bigger festivals. I mean, you were playing with Ted Nugent, or you're playing whatever, or you're Six Flags or whatever, and the casual fans don't necessarily not know that you're not him. Mm-hmm. So they watch the show, they want to go wild, and they're shaking. And they're crying and they're telling you their Ozzy stories. I miss you, and you let them, he talks to them, hey man, you got the little thing there. You give it all to them. So, and you just go with them, let them live in their little fantasy. But it wasn't me. It was more watching them live that piece that really kind of was special. It's theater. Ozzy is theater, and he knows that. You know what I mean? And the great part about doing a tribute, to such a big character, it's acting, it's theater, it's becoming a role and immersing yourself in it. So, and when you come off stage, take the makeup off and the gear off, you're you. Mm-hmm. But, hopefully for 2 hours, they got to relive 1989, all over again. And, for $10 or whatever their cover charge was, they got their money's worth. And that was the goal every time. And it was just like the wow factor. We dropped the curtain, you see their eyes and you start to sing and they're like, oh my God, this is it. And the stuff is going off, and that's the payback. So it was very rewarding for us. And I think probably, just as much for them.
Is there a venue that was your favorite or the most memorable you can think of?
I don't know if there's a venue necessarily that was my favorite. I mean, of course, all the Live Nation rooms are always fun to, do the things, House of Blues and that kind of thing. But there were certain towns, there were certain areas of the country that were it was almost like they're starved for that kind of entertainment, or they're stepping back in time. The South, it's more of a country music, hip hop type area. But you go up to the Midwest, and those guys, I mean, we drove into town and they have the band's name on the bank sign. And everybody in town is there. Wow. And everyone is singing along, and and it's just the love of Ozzy is so evident in these Midwestern towns. And I mean, we did well out west and up northeast, and all that was great. But there's something about the Midwest and Ozzy, and they love it. And when you show up, I mean, you feel that love, and you're a fan too, and you love it back. And we get to celebrate for 2 hours, Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne, and it's one Friday night or one Saturday night, and it's the best. And that's honestly what kept me doing it for 15 years.
Wow.
Because to your point, it's a lot of work.
What's the largest crowd you think you've played to?
Well, it's kind of cheating to say 20,000, but we've, when you're doing Biker Fest, where we've got Ted Nugent with us and, Warrant and Quiet Riot, and we're there too. There's 20K in front of you and they're all singing along. So, that was pretty cool.
Very cool. It was great seeing you last year, right around when Ozzy passed. There was a group of musicians that got together and did an Ozzy tribute night. Mm-hmm. And you got up and sang some Ozzy songs, and you sound just like him.
I still remember the words, believe it or not. Yeah, no, it was great. A bunch of, the musician, community around here, obviously a lot of big Ozzy fans. They put together this thing right after he passed away. Called me up, asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. How could you say no? Did a couple songs. It was a lot of fun, and it was good to be there and see everybody. So,
and we got a chance to talk, and we chatted outside. And I mentioned I was starting this documentary to let people know about all the work before and after, and it's not just fun and games. And I asked you, from your perspective, tell me about what you also had found. And this is what you said. So Mack, it's great being on stage. It's great getting all the attention. Tell us about behind the scenes, all the work that's involved.
God, see, that's people ask me all the time, like, hey, why did you retire? And it's like, I'm up here on stage for 2 hours. It's fun. It's 20 hours before, the 8 hours after. I've got 20 person crew. It's a lot. Still, work. Plan on a show. You start literally once in advance. Still, the logistics piece of it, to lining up the crew, the light guy, the sound guy, the stage, the truck. You got a truck driver. You got the uniformed guys who are voting up here. And those guys are the only reason, honestly, that I kept doing it on the air. I love them. They're absolutely fantastic. It's a lot of work. Get off stage, go out to meet the crowd, take a lot of pictures. You got there on stage, you load the trucks, you get on the van or a bus, driving 8 hours sleeping. I'm 67 years old. I'm sleeping in a van or a bus. And then you got to get up in the morning and go to work. Now there's going to work. I love it. It was fantastic while I did it.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Honestly, if it was still just the 2 hours on stage, I'd still be doing it. It's all the other. It's the 20-person crew. It's the logistics. It's the late nights. It's the long bus rides, that honestly wears down a guy that's, 55 years old. You can't do that kind of grind for that long. So, no, it is a lot of work. And I was blessed to be able to do it for 15 years. But, at some point, your sanity and your body just says, hey, you're probably at that point where you need to go a little different route.
Yeah. Get into some more of the logistics as far as the whole travel situation, the setup, the breakdown. How did you handle all of that?
Well, as we grew, then the stage show grew and the crew grew. So we ended up, like I said, eventually with 20 people on the entire crew. And, you've got light guys, you've got pyro guys, you've got guys that run tanks and just riggers and bus drivers and management people. And I mean, so it's got people that ultimately I was responsible for. So if it's a booking agent, he's calling you and you immediately start into the logistics months and months out. Mm-hmm. You start to string shows together. What does that look like? You're renting trucks, you're renting buses, you got to pick this gear up at a warehouse, and then things break, it's like running a business, as you live your normal life and work your normal job. So there was plenty to that. And, we'd get to a venue 6 to 8 hours before showtime to set everything up. I'm doing it too. I'm loading gear and unloading gear and setting it up, and I'm running, make sure everything, because works the way it's supposed to. You do a 2 hour set, you come off, you meet and greet for a while, and then you go back to the gear, you break it down, put it in buses, drive to the next city, hope you get some sleep on a van or a bus, and do it again the next day. And then, the next day you drive home, you unload all this gear in your warehouse, you take your fingernail polish off, and you go to work on Monday morning. Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. And I was in the same boat. You're a professional. I was a wealth manager, and had to find the time to squeeze the hours necessary to practice and get the gigs and load in and load out, especially as a drummer with a 17-piece kit.
Yeah.
It's just a ton of work. But it is worth it. I mean, that an hour or 2 or 3 hours you get up on stage, and when people are praising you, it's a high for sure.
Yeah. Seeing the look in their eyes when the curtain drops and the pyro goes off, and you can see it in their eyes. It's 1989 to them, and you're right there with them. I'm loving it as much as you.
That's fantastic. I did have a few year stint in a tribute band because my cover band did Loverboy and Billy Squier pretty well. Those are our 2 strongest types of songs. And so we created this Loverboy, Billy Squier tribute band. We'd take a little break between sets, and we'd have different outfits. And we took the name of 2 album covers, and basically the band was called Get Lucky in the Dark, right? So on a much smaller scale than you, we have had the privilege of playing in a tribute band. It was really very interesting to me going from a cover band to this Get Lucky in the Dark tribute band, because when you're a cover band, you're just another band up there playing a bunch of songs everybody knows. As a tribute band, we would play some of these pretty big venues here in Atlanta. And as soon as we'd walk on stage, everybody would have their cameras out and their video cameras like we were the actual band. And I'd be thinking in my mind, you realize we're not really Loverboy. We're not really Billy Squier, right? But it was such a cool feeling. And of course, for you, you actually looked like Ozzy. You sounded just like him. So it's even multiplied times 10.
There's a video out there, and it's really funny. There's guys taking it. Curtain drops, band comes out, and our guitar player looked just like Zach Wilde.
Okay.
Minus the beard. And this guy is filming, and he's like, oh my God, there's Ozzy. There's Zach. He shaved his beard.
Yeah, where's his beard?
He says this on video.
I love it. I love it.
But he's eating it up, and so it's cool to see that kind of stuff. Like that.
So I'm curious if your band ever got high enough up on the radar where Ozzy actually found out about your tribute band, or his family? Did you ever get a chance to meet him or his family?
Never got a chance to meet him, but yeah, they were aware, and they really liked the band, and we got to the point where we actually invited Zach Wilde to come up and play with us. So I think he had to ask the boss, and the boss being Sharon, and Sharon basically sent his letter like what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing, but don't invite alumni. So I guess it's for her, it's, she's protecting the brand.
Sure.
She's protecting Ozzy and the brand and that kind of thing. So, yes, they were aware. She loved it. Told us so, but it was like, don't be inviting the alumni from the band.
So along those lines, were there ever any issues with copyright infringement or trademark infringement?
No, we never really had any issue with that. But where I did run into trouble was with Facebook. Ozzy had this very famous T-shirt back in, I want to say 82 or whatever, where the executioner is holding up Ozzy's bloody head. He had cut his head off or whatever. So I was like, this T-shirt's great. So we basically ripped the same design, but it was my head. So it's a picture of Ozzy, and it was my head and the executioner and that type of thing. And we put that out as advertisement for the T-shirt. Sold a ton of T-shirts. And Facebook basically suspended me for life for gory content.
For gory content, not because the image was too similar to.
No, we never had any issues. Even his logo, we would rip his logo.
Okay,
it was Blizzard of and really big Ozzy.
Yeah,
so most people saw Ozzy, but never had an issue with any of that.
No cease and desist.
No, it was my bloody head, and I explained to him, I was like, it's my own head. It's cartoon. They're like, we don't care. You're suspended for life.
So interesting. So going back to the business side of what you had to do, what % would you say was music? What % was the business and the logistics and the accounting and all of that?
Very little of it was music. When you're working with professional musicians, they know their stuff. You know what I mean? So I could put together a set list and say, hey, it's going to be, next time we play, we're going to throw in this song. It's going to be fourth in the set. We'll talk about how we basically tie one song to the next. If there's any choreography or lighting cues, we'll talk through those with the guys. The rest of it was business, logistics, how to get from point A to point B and to point C. And you've got a turnaround time of probably 20 minutes. Your budget's X, you're going to make this much money. These guys are all on salary. Your crew's on salary, your band's on salary, you're on variable, that kind of thing. So it was a lot of that.
Did you have a manager that was handling this for you, or did you handle most of it?
I was the CEO and I had a manager. So, I gave directives and the manager did the directives, things like booking hotel rooms and, ordering cars and trucks and buses and that kind of thing. She handled
a lot of work.
That.
Yeah. Who was getting the gigs for you, or did they start to come in?
In the beginning, it was, you dial and smile and you hope that someone answers the phone. After a while, and you start to get a reputation, they start to call you. And then really after a while, then the national booking guys will, because they want a chunk of the money too. So they see a draw, somebody who's making money and drawing a crowd, they want a piece of it, they'll call you.
Are you at liberty to talk about the kind of revenue you would get, gross revenue before expenses?
Yeah, a lot of it just depended on, where we played. If it's a Live Nation room, it could be, $10K. If it was a festival, it could be more than that. If it's your local beer hall that you liked a lot, it was typically, a guarantee plus, the bar. A piece of the bar. So if it was, and that was the great thing about Ozzy fans is that Ozzy fans stay and they drink.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a problem with, a bar deal, at that point. So, but in the beginning, you're taking a loss. It's $100 and a, $90 bar tab. That's where you start.
Right.
And you lose your ass, so.
And then out of that, say 10 grand or whatever, then you have to cover all the expenses for all these yes, all the staff and the roadies and
that's trucks, that's hotel rooms, that's flights. If we're flying somewhere, you paying the truck driver. It's all of that, And every year, my accountant, we do our taxes. Which goes, at some point, you need to start making some money, because all I would do is put the money back in the show.
Right.
I'm hiring another or building more lights or stage or whatever, and I never made a dime.
You're clearly doing it for the love.
That's it.
Not for the money.
Some guys play golf, and some guys play Ozzy.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. You're 10 years into this Blizzard of Ozzy. Mm-hmm. You still enjoying it? You getting burned out?
10 years into it was probably our apex, probably our peak. At that point, we're playing we're playing the big rooms. We've got the band that is in place, the one that, it's really firing on all cylinders at that point, where, I'm loving it at that point. But I'm also getting, I'm getting a little older. I'm in my mid to upper 40s at this point, and things are starting to break down a little bit for me physically. But I loved the band and the crew so much, and because they loved it. And so I kept it going probably 5 more years. It was 5 more years, a few more, a little longer than I probably should have.
So was there a point in time that the light bulb just went on or went off, where you said, okay, I'm done, this is it? Or what led to the ending of Blizzard of Ozzy?
There was a couple things. One is, like I said, to your point, and the work that comes to it. It's so much work. It becomes a company unto itself. It becomes a monster unto itself. I've got payroll, and taxes and this and that, and it's a business, and you're running a business, and it's kind of like, it's exhausting, and still go home and go to work and have that business too. So I was tired, and then I got married. And when you get married, there's, I wanted to stay home on weekends and go to volleyball games and, kind of live that particular life. So that was a change. And then for me, not that it was a big deal, but people are like, hey, it's cool. But, hey, can't you sing your own stuff? I'm like, yeah, I can sing my own stuff. And so I did. I took a lot of the guys that were in Blizzard of Ozzy and I said, hey, let's go write some original music.
Right. And that's the new band CEO?
That's right.
All right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about CEO?
Well, when you look like me, and you're playing hard rock, heavy metal music, you kind of embraced that, and initially it was like, let's kind of play up a character of the, of the businessman, heavy metal guy, and kind of parlay that into a character. And so we kind of named it after that, just kind of embraced the look a little bit. And ended up, the first album we put out was a little independent thing. I actually ended up getting picked up by a major producer who works with Seven Dust, Incubus, Slash, Miles, that kind of thing. He picked us up, and they ended up getting a nice little record deal out of it. And it's just that's been my foot in music ever since. It's just the writing and recording and putting out these records without the grind of touring and whatever.
Without the touring, yeah. So you have 4 albums out now?
Yeah, well, it's going to be officially 4 this fall. We're done recording. In fact, we got photos and that kind of stuff coming up. So yeah, then the next album will be out in the fall.
I've heard 2 of the 3 that are out so far are just phenomenal music, just unbelievable. Hard rock. It's just, man, it just sings to me. So
it's funny you say that because the first 3 albums I purposefully stayed away from Ozzy, meaning it was not anything that the phrasings, the way he enunciates things, which is natural to how I sing. I stayed away from it on purpose. This album, I embraced it. So you're going to hear more of the Ozzy phrasings, more of that kind of how he does things on it. I'm just singing at this point. I'm not materially trying to sing. I'm just going to sing. And if it sounds like Ozzy, so be it.
If someone was to start a tribute band today, what advice would you give them?
Well, initially when we started, there wasn't a lot of tribute bands out there. It really wasn't a thing. I think there was a Kiss tribute band. I know that, there was a Bon Jovi that had just started. There was a Journey that was getting started right about the same time we did, and an AC/DC. So we were kind of like these OGs or whatever. So it really wasn't that thing. Now it's, every band worth their salt has 2 or 3 tribute bands out there touring. So the competition is amazingly hard. So to bring yourself above the noise, you've got to bring not only, you damn well better sound like them. You better play their songs exactly the way they're supposed to be played. And you got to give them a show. Be authentic. You know what I mean? Give those people they're seeing, whether it's a 45-minute opener or 2 hours, let them believe that they were there in that club when Nirvana was in clubs. If you can do that, you're going to do really well. But if you're just slapping on a $30 Party City wig and you're just kind of going through the motions just to get, $45 a night and a bar tab, don't do it. Yeah.
I think we paid $35 for our wigs. So they were probably a little higher level than the $30 wigs.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned AC/DC. You think of Back in Black?
Yeah.
David James. Funny story. 15, 20 years ago, I had these guys, Bob Cowles, John Abate, and David James. We used to play every month or so, get together and jam. We would go up to Montana's and we had open band night. And we were in my band room in the basement one day, and my son and his buddies were in the other room listening. And so we get done with the rehearsal, and I asked the guys, I said, hey, how did the AC/DC sound? Oh, just like AC/DC. I said, how'd the Journey sound? Just like AC/DC. How'd the Van Halen sound? Just like AC/DC. Right. And I thought about it. I said, he does. It sounds like AC/DC on every song. And for that reason, I kind of bowed out. Well, apparently what happened is they got together and talked about it. And they said, well, why don't we start an AC/DC band? So I'm kind of the reason that they even, started with that idea. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. It's funny. We started out about the same time, and, we would basically tour together, one headlining, the other opening or whatever. And one night we were playing some club or whatever, and David wasn't there for soundcheck yet. And they're like, hey, can you come do soundcheck? I can't do AC/DC. And it was horrible. So, it was kind of like, I'm a one-trick pony and AC/DC ain't it. But I love those guys. It's
a tough one to do. Yep. I've known Bob 30 years. John Abate, the original guitar player. Oh, yeah. I met him when I was looking for a new car when I first moved to Atlanta in 1989, 1990. Buff. Yeah. Yep. He was.
Yeah. Buff.
Yep. Well, Mack, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for sharing your experience and your knowledge of the behind the scenes, what it takes, and all the effort before and after the show. Really appreciate your time today. Until next time, this is Backstage Pass with Mike Ross.